Sathiyo, today we are going to discuss about what is political philosophy. In the previous video, we had tried to understand what is political thought, and I have noticed during 40 years of my teaching that most of the students they are confused about the distinction between political thought and political philosophy, and this is a very important question for us because these two concepts are slightly different from each other, and therefore we have to understand the subtleties and the differentiations which define the political thought and political philosophy. Now political philosophy is normally in the western parlance, in the western world, it is supposed to have originated in the ancient Greeks with the Athens, Socrates and Epicurus and Plato and Aristotle and so on. But in the Indian context, if you look at the philosophy, the political philosophy and the philosophy both, they are rooted in very old, centuries and millenniums, back in Vedas. And if you read a little bit about Vedas and Indian scriptures, you will find there is a lot of not only philosophy but also political philosophy is ingrained in all those, great scriptures. Now the question is that every point of history we want some political action, and that political action normally we want either for the status quo, that means we want the situation as it is, no change, or alternatively we may desire a change. Now the reason behind both status quo or change, our actions leading to the status quo or to the change, is defined by one very important concept, and that is that if we want to retain the status quo, we think that the status quo is would be a better proposition. Or if we want to bring changes, we are sure that the changes that we are contemplating would be better than what exists at that particular point in history. So whether you are for the status quo or whether you are for the change, you both are thinking of something better. And if you are thinking something of better, that obviously implies that you must have an idea of what is good. Only then you can move on or take political action. Now the question here is, and that is very important, that what is good? And normally everybody may have what a good is, everybody may have an opinion, everybody may have an idea of what is good for him or her, what is good for the society, what is good for the political system, what is good for the humanity, and what is good for the nation, and so on and so forth, endless. Good for anything. So the idea of good is, questionable, because your idea of good can differ from my idea of good or anybody else's idea of good. So how do we reach a point where there is a general consensus about the goodness? And here, your idea is questioned. Your ideas and opinions, they are questionable. Because unless they are questioned, how you will prove that they are right or wrong? And therefore, in any idea of good or any idea about the good, there is a very corresponding component of questioning or questionability. And when you are being put to questions, you might be proved right or you might be proved wrong. And therefore, we are actually trying to move on beyond the opinion, beyond the idea, to the truth. And when we say that we are not for opinion or for any idea, but we are for the true knowledge, we are for the truth, then we say that if we discover the truth, that what is good, then we will be able to improve our existing society and take our society forward for a better future or retain our society for a better future. So preservation or retention or status quo or a change is all hinged on one single idea of goodness, and therefore when we try to reach out to that good life, when we try to reach out to that good society, then we are actually what is a good state, what is a good government, and so on and so forth. What is a good political process? What is a good political? Whenever we are trying to define that goodness, then political philosophy emerges. So I have taken this route of explaining to you what is political philosophy, because we must understand that political philosophy is different from political thought. And in political philosophy, the fundamental defining norm is that we want to move for the better or we want to retain for the better. And we cannot do that unless we have an idea of good. And whenever we have an idea of good and we try to explore the idea of good, then we are trading into the path of philosophy and we are trading into the domain of political philosophy. So political philosophy, that way you can say, is a part of the larger whole, which is the philosophy. And obviously the philosophy then becomes the quest for wisdom, it becomes a quest for truth, it becomes a quest for universal knowledge, which is very much contained in the ancient Vedas. Unfortunately, because of the language barriers, we have not been able to access our Vedas, and most of the Indian students, they have not been able to access to the Veda. Normally, we hear from here and there about Veda, they are that, but because of the linguistic barriers, we have not been ourselves able to read what the Vedas is all about, and very few people in India would understand what is the Veda, and still they may have an opinion that Veda is good or Veda is bad. So, having opinion about the whole is not philosophy. The having knowledge of the whole is about philosophy. So, in philosophy, we replaces opinion with knowledge. This you have to understand, and therefore, political philosophy being a part of larger whole philosophy, then political philosophy is also trying to replace political opinion and political mere ideas with true knowledge of what is political. So when we are trying to trade into or enter into the path of what is true knowledge of the political and trying to know the true nature of political things, what is right for politics, what is right politics, what is good politics, what is good political order, then we are entering into the domain of political philosophy. So, this is the second thing that we have to remember. The third thing that we have to remember is that when we say truth or when we say knowledge, then all knowledge about truth also implies certain assumptions concerning the nature of political. If we say political philosophy, then certainly there are certain assumptions about our knowledge, our opinion, our ideas. We start with certain assumptions, and therefore those assumptions are the starting point for political philosophy. Because unless you have the assumption, how you will prove that the assumption is right or wrong, true or untrue? And therefore, before you start a political philosophy, you ought to have certain assumptions about the nature of political things, whether it is the state or the government or the process or the culture, whatever, political culture, whatever. So these assumptions, they are, assumptions. That means they are questionable. They are not final knowledge. They are assumptions. Now, these assumptions are assumptions, and then these assumptions are made the theme of critical and coherent analysis. And critical and coherent analysis means we try to investigate all aspects, all aspects of those assumptions and try to prove it or disprove it. And therefore, when this is attempted in such a way, an assumption is political assumption is approached in such a way that we are trying to critically analyze and see whether it is truth or untruth or partly truth and partly untruth, then we are into the scientific approach, following scientific approach. And Therefore, when you try to investigate philosophically anything political, then there are four things that we have to keep in mind. First is that we want to know the truth about life, that is philosophy, and truth about political life, that is political philosophy. So that is the first thing. The second is that when we are talking of the philosophy, then we are not talking of a part, goodness of a part of the whole. We are talking of the whole humanity, we are talking of the whole state, we are talking of the whole society, and therefore, when we are talking of the political, we are actually talking of the betterment of the political status of the entire society. That is the second thing, and not part thereof. The third is that by betterment, we certainly mean the development of our society and humanity. That because we don't want to prescribe a political philosophy which is only for a section of the humanity. That political philosophy we believe is for the whole of humanity. Like in Indian context, we say Visudhaiva Kutumbakam or Sarve Bhavantu Sukhna. That means the entire world is our family. The entire, everybody becomes happy. So this kind of a philosophy, is a defining thing for the whole humanity, for the whole of universe. So this is the third thing, that is we are talking of improving and bettering the entire life and culture of the entire society. And finally, that all this can be done only when we maintain law and order in our society, and therefore all political philosophy is trying to regulate or prescribe or give prescriptions so that there can be peace, harmony, order, etc. in the society. And all this is, it becomes a prescriptive mode. So political philosophy, you can say, you see, is always in the prescriptive mode. It is prescribing certain things for the betterment of the existing political order. That is the third thing that we have to understand. And finally, the political philosopher, who is that, whosoever that political philosopher might be, he has or she has a contemporary context in whichever that's why it is said that, oh, that gentleman was product of his time. Every political philosopher, every political thinker is a product of his or her time, because it is the contextual thing that gives shape to your knowledge and gives shape to your thinking. You cannot think of a situation thousands years back because you are not aware how things were. Someone who is born today has no idea of 50 years back how Indian society was, and therefore all his thinking would be defined by the contemporary context of the Indian society today. So when a political philosopher is, taking a contemporary context, then he is aware about the inadequacies in the existing political institution. He is aware about the inadequacies in the existing political process. He knows what are the political culture and how and where the political culture is, having aberrations or wrongs and needs corrections. And therefore, in prescribing, in giving a prescriptive, prescription for the betterment of that existing institutions, existing processes, and existing political culture, he is or she is certainly having an idea of a better future for this society and the humanity. We'll take an example of Plato's, Republic. And in Plato's Republic, most of you might have certainly read Plato's Republic, and if you are not, you must read. So, in Greek city-states, which were called polis, Polis, it was called polis. We find that Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, they were all, they were unhappy with the existing structures, because they found that the political culture in the Greek society was suffering from what they called stasis. The Greek word is stasis, which means factionalism all around, conflict all around. And therefore, if you remember Hobbes also in England, Hobbes is saying that the state of nature is a war of all against all. So, I mean, whether it is Hobbes or whether it is Plato in the Greek society or Hobbes in England, both have a contemporary context and both are prescribing certain things. They prescribe contract for the better future. In the same way, Plato prescribes, a kind of ideal state for the better future. So, there is a moral angle in the philosopher's prescriptions about the political, right? Plato wanted to prescribe an ideal state because he was unhappy with the existing police in Greek city states. Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau are prescribing contract theory and suggesting you a new political theory because they were unhappy with the existing political order in the British etc. society and so on. So, whenever a political philosopher is thinking, he is not just thinking about an institution, giving you a institution or a process or a culture, but he is thinking about prescribing a new existing an institution better than the existing one, a new process better than the existing processes, a new political culture better than the existing political processes, and here political philosophy is emerges, whereas when we say that how is it different from the political thought and political thinker, then certainly a couple of things very quickly, just to rewind the whole thing, I must point out here that when you are thinking politically, you are just thinking mechanically how the state might have originated, what could have been the structure of the state and nature and function according to the whims and fancies. So if you are just focusing on the state and how it originated, what is the structure, nature, function, relationship with the individual, etc., then you are into the political thought mode. You are a political thinker. But the moment your prescriptions about all these things, they are focused to change the society, make the human life better, make the social life better, make the humanity better. At that moment, all your political prescriptions about the state, about the government, about the political process, about the political culture, they assume the character of political philosophy. So this is the fundamental conceptual idea about political philosophy, that a political philosophy is always prescriptive. A political philosophy has a moral undertone. A political philosophy always try to improve upon the existing or provide you a better political order, and therefore a political philosophy is slightly different from a political thought. Thank you very much.